right, you guys, it's episode 64 of Inner Demons, and like always, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys, real quick. I'm getting off to a late start. It's been a long day, but I'm going to try to get through this and get this episode out to you guys tonight. Now, before I do, though, let me say this. So like I've told you guys before, I go through all the comments. I try to at least read them. Even though I don't answer all the comments, I'll try to read a couple. I'll respond to one. I'll read a couple. I'll respond to one. So I do read them all. And, you know, going through episode 63, you guys touched on a lot of things that I'm going to comment on in this episode. And it actually kind of helped me because there's some things that I talked about, but I don't think I really emphasized the severity of the things that I talked about. Now, what I'm referring to is the pack of gorillas, the silverbacks that were on my back. I told you guys that I had a habit. It was a dealer's habit. I mean, and what that means, for those of you that just might not know what that means, it means that basically I could get as much dope as I wanted. Money was not an issue. I could cop as much dope as I could shoot, basically. And I was killing myself with that shit. The last couple of weeks that I was out there, literally, I mean, I told you guys that I was shooting so much, I had to use the bottom of a can, a beer can, to cook that shit up. I think there was one of you that said you used the bottom of a paint can or something. That's more than what I was doing. I thought I was doing bad. But anyways, so that gives you an idea of how much I was using. Five outfits, 5 syringes every time I got down. And that's just a crazy habit. And I'm talking about, you know, this stuff that I was shooting was just black, thick tar. It was bad. So some of you that have experienced a little bit of that, you guys can imagine what I was going through. It was tough. By the time we were in Campbell, I was already starting to feel it. You got to remember, they kicked the door in at around 6:30. Well, let me take that back. They said it doesn't matter. They said that they kicked the door in at around 6. I want to say it was like 5:30. And really, barring exigent circumstances, they're not supposed to come in that early. But we'll just say they came in at 6 o'clock, 6:30. So obviously they caught me by surprise. I didn't get to jump up and do nothing. And I was already feeling it. By the time we were in Campbell, I was already feeling the effects of the withdrawals. So by the time I hit Santa Clara County Jail, which is like 10 hours later, 10, 12 hours later, it was starting to come on pretty bad. I mean, it didn't have me on the floor. I wasn't like that, but I was struggling with it. I could feel it. I was hot. I was having hot flashes, hot and cold flashes. My bones started to ache. My muscles hurt. And I just wanted to just be left alone and just lay down somewhere. So I told you guys, you know, basically that I'm in the observation cell, and you know, these classification officers in the Santa Clara County Jail / gang intel officers, because they're basically, they have the same title. They work hand in hand with the agencies out there. I already explained all that to you guys. So from day one, they were working with the agency that arrested me and all my co-defendants. They wanted to know who, what, where, when, why. You know, it was the first time that I had been in the Santa Clara County Jail. I came in with, you know, Nuestra Familia blasted across the back of my head. So they were like, who's this dude? You know, they were just tripping on me, just put it like that. The gang intel officers had never heard of me before, and I wasn't a local. You know, I'm from San Francisco, so these guys put it on real thick too. The agency, SEC, SET, those agents put it on thick. This guy has got too much influence with the Norteños. Keep them isolated, keep them away from the rest of the jail population, from the other Norteños, because he's going to cause chaos. He's going to cause havoc, all kind of. So they, you know, basically they made them take extra steps, extra precautions to keep me isolated. If they could, they would have put me under the jail. So I told you guys, you know, the very first time I noticed it was like, I want to say that night when they put me in the cell, I cleaned up a little bit. I did what I could in the cell, and then I just laid down. That's how bad I felt. I laid down and I didn't sleep all night. Of course, I stayed up all night. Maybe I might have drifted off here and there, but it was tough. In the morning, that's when they started running chow. And where I was positioned, where the observation cell that they had me in is right smack directly in front of the chow hall. So every tank on the second deck has to go into that chow hall, which means I would basically see everybody in the jail. I want to say they called the GP, the guys in orange that were out in front of me. I want to say they called that Hollywood. All the way to my right, they had, at that time, they had some other GPs, and that was called Siberia. Around the corner, they had some more mainliners, and they called that area the snake pits. And then, you know, like kitty corner from where the snake pits are was ADSEG, Area 51. You guys heard me talk about it. That's where Joe Beta from Palmas, the guy that I had appointed to run the jail under me while I was out there on the streets. And let me make that clear, because I guess this was something I didn't make clear in my last episode. Somebody asked, well, how did you maintain contact with him? Did you have a cell phone? No, I stayed in touch with Joe while I was on the streets. So I basically ran the Santa Clara County Jail from the streets through Joe Beta. He was like he was my buffer. He was my go-between. And, you know, I didn't have, like, I wasn't really hands-on with it. I told Joe's been around. He's been to Pelican Bay. He's done a lot of hold time. He's the hermano. So, you know, he knows the functions. I told Joe, go ahead and run the jail. Go ahead and implement your policies, do all that stuff. Take care of the day-to-day affairs. If you run across, you know, some major issues, if there's something that comes up with another race in the jail, if there's somebody that needs to be removed, if there's an immediate threat or something like that, then get at me. Otherwise, go ahead and deal with that stuff, because, I mean, really, I didn't want to be bothered with the day-to-day stuff. I was out there on the streets taking care of the streets. So Joe handled the jail, and really he was handling it before he got my number and before, you know, we got in touch. So anyways, that's where Area 51 was at. Also, back there with him, I knew that there was another individual, another C by the name of Chopo from Watsonville. You guys have seen pictures of him. You're going to probably be looking at a picture of him right now. It looks like Julio on these pictures. These are the only pictures I have of him. But, you know, he was doing Fed time at that time, going in and out of the feds. I believe he was back in on a parole violation. You might be seeing some pictures of him with the fellas over there in ADX with Corny and the rest of those guys. So, you know, Chopo's been around. I pulled him, me and Mikey pulled him back in, I want to say 97 in the adjustment center in San Quentin. So anyways, I knew they were back there, and that's where I wanted to get back there to ADSEG. I was trying to make my way back to Area 51, but they had me locked down in this observation cell, and they did not want to let me out of there. You know, they felt like, you know, these cops told them that I was a threat to their jail, so they ran with it. You know, the first morning that I popped up when I heard movement out there is, you know, I get up, I go to my cell door, and it had a little window. There was a small window on the door, and I'm standing right there, posted up, looking at the chow hall, because I know they're getting ready to run chow, breakfast or something. So one of the COs goes and he grabs a white nurse's partition, you know, one of those little, like a little partition. And I'm standing there posted up on my window, and he just puts it right in front of my door. Basically, he obstructed my view, so I couldn't see. So I'm standing there and I'm like, oh man, look at these guys. You know what I mean? So really, that's what you guys want to do. And to be honest with you guys, it kind of upset me. I was trying to initiate contact with somebody so that I could get a line to either Joe back there in ADSEG or Angel. I knew Angel was somewhere. I thought Angel was on the 4th floor, but I knew there was a chance he could be in the old jail in the snake pits or somewhere around there. So you guys got to remember too, this was my first rodeo. This is the first time I was in the Santa Clara County Jail. And I'd heard a lot of stuff about the jail. Over the years, I heard about the 92 indictments, how they had all these lockup tiers and all these, super sag, super max tiers. And I would touch every one of those tiers within those 10 years that I was in that jail. As a matter of fact, let me say this. So I tell you guys that, after every episode, I always read the comments. I read the comments and I try to respond to some of you. Even though I might not respond to everybody, I'll read a couple. I'll reach out to one of you. I'll read a couple, reach out so that I'm interacting and, I'm kind of responding to some of the things that you guys say. And, a lot of you were commenting on the fact that I had spent 10 years in the jail, that was a long time. Damn right, that was a long time. It was a long time for me, trust me. 10 years, I think I broke a record. There was one other cat that I believe they said that he was there for like 8 years or something. He was a Hells Angels fighting a serious case. But, my case, you guys will understand why it took so long. There were certain things, legalities that came up in court. And then, the way that the indictments work when they indict you, and then they just kept on putting it off. And then, there was all kinds of conflicts of interest because there were so many of us that, only one lawyer could represent the public defender's office. Only one lawyer from the alternate public defender's office could represent a client, on the same case. They had to give everybody private lawyers. It's a conflict of interest, because they work together, they're colleagues. So there was a lot of things that kept on delaying the case, that kept on delaying the trial. They violated my constitutional rights. I fought search and seizure issues. You guys are going to hear about all that. I'm not going to bog you down and bore you with all that legal mumbo jumbo, but I am going to give you the crux of everything so that you can understand how dirty I got done in the courts. So one of the other comments that I just want to respond to real quick was something to the effect of, whenever you're going through withdrawals, those kind of withdrawals, they make you physically and mentally weak. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I didn't have my bearings under me. I didn't have my feet under me. I was definitely at a weak point because of the withdrawals, mentally, physically, whatever, all of that. Trust me, I was. But I'm not gonna insult nobody's intelligence. I'm not gonna tell anybody that this is the reason why I did what I did. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. I made conscious decisions. I was hurt. Trust me, I was hurting. Those withdrawals had me down. But I knew what I was doing. I was conscious of the decisions I was making. So I'm not gonna, it's a cop-out to say anything different. However, I was at a weak point. It did have me at a weak point. I wonder myself what would have happened had I not been going through those withdrawals. Had my mentality been different? Would I have taken a different stance? Would I have, played my cards different? I don't know. I can't tell you guys that. Who knows? But nonetheless, yeah, it does make you weak, and I think they knew that. Now, one of you also said something to the effect of, you didn't think it mattered. You didn't think it mattered whether or not I was in an observation cell, they put me in an observation cell, or if they put me on the tier with the homies. You said it didn't matter. You didn't think that would have affected your decision-making either way. I strongly disagree, and I'm going to tell you why. It was the perfect storm. They isolated me because of what they said was to keep me isolated away from the Northaniels in the county jail because I had too much influence. That's what they were saying. I also knew they had a plan. I knew they had an agenda. I know their thinking was, let's put them in the observation cell. Let's isolate them. This will give him time to think. Let him marinate in his thoughts. they knew I was going through withdrawals because I know that these cops that brought me in, I know they communicated that to them. Even though I didn't tell medical staff when I came into the jail, I know that these cops, the outside agencies, communicated that to, classification and gang intel. So they knew I was in bad shape. The other thing is that my morale was gone. Not being around the homies, not having that camaraderie, it just put me in a dark place. Everything that was going on, me fighting a life case, the way that they hit the pad, the condition my girl was in, her situation, everything was weighing on me. So I know that because once I would get on a tier with the other homies, my morale immediately spiked. It was like I stopped caring again. I was like, man, I don't give a shit. I hope, the feds pick this up. By then I'm clean. I'm not feeling withdrawals no more. I'm getting my health back. So I get back on the tier with the fellas and, I start feeding off of their morale, off of their energy. We were all back there like, once things got bad, it got to the case just started getting worse and worse, and it continued to snowball, and more people got added on, and more charges started coming, and we started to think that the feds were going to hit us. We were back there like, man, who gives a fuck? We don't care. I hope the feds pick us up. I hope we get life in the feds, not in the state. That's the mentality that we had back there. All four of us were like, so what? And even though I was in that mental state during the first 3 weeks when I first hit the jail, that was gone by the time I would hit a tier and be back around the fellas again. So, I do think that it had an effect. I think it had an impact. You put somebody that's in a bad situation, you isolate them, you put them in an observation cell. It gives them a lot of time, a lot of idle time, to process everything that's going on. It gives them a lot of idle time to think about all the bad things that are happening. You don't got the other homies right there. You don't got that morale. You're going through withdrawals. So I think it did have an effect. In some type of way, it had an effect. I believe things would have been different if they would have brought me straight in and put me on the tier from Jump Street with the other homies. Things would have been different. I would have felt like I had to stand on my feet. I had to represent. I'd have felt, that camaraderie, that, that fire that we feel when we're amongst each other. So anyways, so one of you had said that, and I just wanted to, give you my position on that. I think that it would have made a difference. It might not for you. I don't know. I can only speak for myself. So anyways, the other thing that I talked about in episode 63, but I don't think I really emphasized on it enough, is the fact that, I had this pack of gorillas on my back. I'm serious. This was the worst habit that I've ever had to kick. These withdrawals were terrible. I mean, they were intense. Every kind of symptom that you can think of. And for those of you that are not familiar with the withdrawal symptoms, it's like you got the worst flu that you could possibly catch. And those symptoms are bad. Throwing up, the shakes, your stomach's messed up. You got the sweats, hot and cold flashes, your muscles hurt, your joints hurt, your nerves are all messed up. You just want to punch the wall, and there's a lot of different things going on when you're going through those withdrawals. And again, when you have a habit like I had that time, it was horrible. That alone is a deterrent to never want to go back and mess with that again. That kicked my ass, trust me. It took 30 days to get through that habit. Anyway, so this is what the COs were doing for the first week. They were really on top of it. Every time they ran breakfast, lunch, they used to give them box lunches, so they didn't come out at lunch. They only came out twice for movement, and that was breakfast and dinner. But every time they came out, like during the first week, these guys would get that white nurse's partition and put it right in front of my door. I'd hear them like, hey, let's get ready to, run lunch. And I'd hear one of them say, grab the partition and put it over there in front of Mendoza's door. So, it got to the point where I started to get upset about it. And I had actually threatened one of the COs and told him, like, hey, you know what? You guys can't shut me down. If you're trying to shut me down, it's not going to work. I can still get word to people. I can use the phone. I can still move around in this jail. And, I was mad. I was mad because they were trying to shut me down. And in reality, they really were. It didn't matter that I had the phone. I was bluffing. There's nothing that I could do on that phone. What I'm going to do, call the homies lady and tell them, hey, bro, they're throwing up a white nurse's partition in front of my cell, man. You guys go ahead and board up and, start protesting. So anyways, after about a good solid week of them doing that, eventually somebody forgot to put it up, or somebody just didn't care. Or by that time, these COs, they had a little bit of interaction with me because they were right there. Their station was right outside my cell. So, there'd be times when I'd be back there and I'd just be lounging, just sitting there awake, just hurting, trying to get through these withdrawals. And, one of them might give me an extra lunch or ask if I want to take an extra shower. Once they stopped putting that partition up, I noticed when they let the snake pits out one time that Angel was in the chow hall. I seen him. I could recognize his ugly little face from anywhere. So anyways, I'm right there posted on the window, and, luckily he was facing me. There's those tables. They got four chairs on each table. Well, he just so happened to be facing me. So, I'm waving in the window and he sees me and he's looking. He couldn't make out who it was. When they came out and they ran the snake pits back, that's when he seen me when he was walking by. He was like, oh, bro. He's like, damn, how long you been here? I'm like, bro, I've been here a week. You know what I mean? He's like, bro, the next time we come out later on tonight, I got you. He's like, what do you need? You need everything, man. I ain't got nothing, bro. You know what I'm saying? He goes, we got you, man. There was a couple other homies. So later on that night, he hooks me up with the care package, and the COs were cool enough because obviously I couldn't get it under my door. They popped the tray. Matter of fact, because, I was using the phone, and I was pretty much the only one in the op cell that was using that phone. The COs just basically let me keep my tray slot open, and they let me have the phone hanging into myself. So the phone is on a roll cart, and you got to reach through your tray slot and grab the receiver and then reach back out and you dial your number. But I used to take the headset and I used to just hang it on my door so it was inside my cell. This was a way to keep my tray slot open. So when they were walking by later on that night, the CO was cool enough to let him pass me a bag. He was like, yeah, I got this bag. So, the CO, he goes through it, and, there's coffee, there's soups, chips, Zuzus and Wham Whams, all kinds of goodies, candy bars and all that good stuff. They, they looked out, they stocked me up with cosmetics, deodorant, couple deodorants, couple soaps. They looked out, they blessed me. So just that little bit of contact, just that little bit of communication with the homies, it boosted my morale. That's what I'm talking about. It's the same thing that I was just talking about as far as being back on a tier. It's a morale booster. So, I felt like, yeah, I finally made contact with the homies. They looked out, they blessed me. It was just good to be back, amongst the fellas. Just that's the only way that the best way I can say it. So anyways, so the two observation cells that they have right there in Second East, when you're housed right there in those observation cells, they shower you over by the snake pits. Matter of fact, it's the same showers that the snake pits use when they shower. So whenever I would come out to go shower, they'd escort me over to Second West. So right there in Second West, you have an officer's podium. It's like a big podium where they sit behind, and there's like a cage. And then behind that, around the corner, that's where they have the showers. And right across from the showers, that's where the snake pits are. Now, the snake pits, it's like a long tank, but you can only see like two big windows, the front of it. But the homies, they're always posted up right there on the window. I don't know if it's part of their security. Maybe they got household policy. Somebody's always right there, because anytime there's movement out there, if there's somebody that's coming off the elevator, or if they're coming from Hollywood, or they're coming from Siberia, or around the corner, they got to pass through that little area right there and either go down the elevator or the stairs. So, a lot of times you see the homies posted up there. Every time I went to the shower, I seen somebody there, and they go get Angel, and Angel would come over, and I'd be able to at least make contact with them while after I would shower. There's a gate right there, and Snake Pits is almost like right across. And, we could communicate right there. They leave me back there for 10, 15 minutes, and we chop it up. And by the time I ended up making contact with them, because this was like a few days later, they had already heard that, my house got hit along with some of the other homies out there. Their houses got hit. Word was already out there on the streets. So they knew I was somewhere in the jail, and everybody was trying to figure out where I was at, when they let me come from up under the jail. So anyways, now I'm making contact with the fellas. I'm connected to them, but it's hit and miss. I don't got a direct route to them. I don't have, an established route. It's just whenever I either go to the showers or they're passing by. So at that point, Joe was still running the jail. Now, let me talk a little bit about the phone calls, because that's where I really want you guys to understand everything that was going on. And, let me also add this. What's done is done. I'm not trying to say that, what happened was okay. I'm not. You guys will make that, conclusion. You guys can draw your own conclusions based on the totality of everything that happened. And I'm sure that as you see how things unfolded, you guys are going to be like, damn, that's crazy. And the thing I want you guys to really understand is the timeline. The timeline. I think a lot of people don't understand, or they don't really put it in perspective. So I got arrested in June of 2004. June 11th, 2004 is the day that they kicked my door in and we all got raided. So I would spend the next 3 weeks in an observation cell. That's when the damage was done. After that, I was moved to another part of the jail, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. I was moved to that part of the jail. And then, for the next year, I want to say around 14, 15 months, these cops from SEC, SET, it was mainly the commander, Bob Messer, would pop up. They pull me out for an attorney visit or something, and these guys will be out there and they'd be like, come on, man, you want to help yourself? And they were just relentless with trying to get me to cooperate. And I told them at every opportunity that I got, I'm not going to talk to you guys. You guys need to stop coming up here. Stop trying to pull me out. Stop trying to talk to me. You guys are going to get me caught up. And whenever they would do this, I would even tell the homies, hey, these cops, they keep coming up. They're trying to pull me out. And they were doing that with other homies. I wasn't the Lone Ranger. Trust me. They were doing that to a lot of homies. So for the purpose of, putting this timeline in perspective, I'm going to spin forward a little bit. You guys got to understand. So the first time they tried to proposition me was as soon as the cuffs went on. I told you guys about that. For the next year, they would continue to try to come up. Around 14, 15 months, I want to say it was around 15 months, after coming up around 5, 6 times and me shooting them down every time, and me telling the homies when they would come up, hey, these guys keep trying to come up. They came up one last time, and it was almost like they threatened me, hey, so you're not going to cooperate? No, man, I told you guys, I'm not going to talk to you. Okay, well, I'm going to just let you know right now. If you don't, something big is going to come down the pike, and it's going to hit you right in the chest, and you're going to get buried with the rest of your homies. And honestly, by then, I'm not kicking no more. I got my feet back under me, my bearings back. And I looked at Bob Messer and I was just like, what are you going to do, Bob? I mean, you act like I got the death penalty or something. What are you going to do, indict me? Is that what you're going to do? Go ahead, do what you got to do, man. Have the feds indict me. Then I won't have to deal with the state. So what did they do? They indicted me. So from that point, a lot of things would happen in the jail, which you guys are going to all hear about. And we're talking like from there until 2008, that's when everything would fall apart. All the way up until 2008. I got arrested in 2004. In 2008, after the fellas dropped the hammer on me, that's when I made the choice that I made. And it was only after they dropped the hammer twice. But, I'm going way ahead of myself and getting way too far ahead. I want to put this in perspective for you guys so that you guys, get everything that happened within these 10 years, or especially within the first 5, the critical years. Everything that happened after the fact, it is what it is. But everything that happened during those first 5 years, that's what I really want, to pound into you guys. So anyways, classification, they used to walk the tiers. The classification gang intel officers, they used to walk the tiers. They would do this the whole time I was there. This is just their thing. They would hit the max tiers, even the active tiers. They would walk the tier, and if somebody wanted, a celly, or somebody wanted to get somebody moved or something or whatever, they were right there. That's why they would walk the tier, to basically they wanted to be hands-on. That's the best way I can explain it. These guys were just really involved. So when they would come up by the observation cells on their way back to Second East, that's when I would stop them and I would ask. There was one named Paul Cobb, and when he'd come up, I remember him from when I first came in. He was down there by classification by the podium, so I knew he was one of the gang intel officers. And I would ask him, I would tell him, I'm like, hey, man, why you guys got me in an observation cell? I'm not going to cause your jail no problems. I'm not going to cause no problems here. Why don't you put me back in ADSEG in Area 51? And he laughed. I'm talking about a gut-wrenching laugh. He said, you're crazy. It's never going to happen. You're going to stay right there, man. He's like, it's not up to me. He said, if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't do it either. But it's not my call. That's above my head. And as far as I know, you're going to stay right where you're at. So obviously I was upset, but I continued to push. I kept pushing every chance I got. Every time I went to court, every time I seen classification, because there's different officers. You had like 4 or 5 that worked that unit. I would ask them, man, why don't you run it by your sergeant? I'm not causing no problems up there. All I want to do is fight my case. I got enough going on without you guys, throwing me in an observation cell like some kind of JCAT. Just let me go on about my business. I just want to be around my people. And they were like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, I would stay there in the observation cell, I want to say, for about a good 3 weeks. And let me talk a little bit about the phone calls, because that's something else that I really need to clarify. And I want, I want you guys to know exactly what was said and how it happened. So, from the first time I talked to, my mom, my stepfather, Vicky, when I first came in, obviously I told you guys how they were broken. They're broken. The only one that was, holding his grit was my stepfather, because again, he understood. He'd been to the joint. He'd done time before. So, he knew what I was going through. And there was probably a part of him that wanted to see me come home, but he also respected the fact that, he always respected what I represented. And he just respected the fact that, I was trying to stay true to what I believed in, even though my mom and my girl they didn't understand. So, I would call my mom while I'm in the observation cell, and it's like every time I would call just to see how they were doing. I'm not calling to talk about my case. I'm not calling to talk about nothing, but just how are you doing? But within a couple minutes, it would turn to, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna be the sacrificial lamb? Are you gonna cooperate? What are you gonna do? She's like, you need to think about your dying wife, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And that's all my mom would talk about. And I even at one point told my stepfather, man, I was like, Pops, man, talk to her. Tell her, quit talking like that. She's going to get me caught up. I'll say this. I'm going to tell you guys like this. And I believe I kind of emphasized this in episode 63. Santa Clara County, the gang intel officers, they were more involved than any other gang intel officer in any other county jail that I've been to. I've said that already. But these guys would literally sit down there and listen to every single phone call. And I had no idea that that's what they were doing, because, look, I've been to other jails where I was trying to smuggle dope in, and, the individual that was willing to send it in didn't know how to do it, didn't know how to package it, didn't know nothing. So I had to sit there on the phone and give her step-by-step instructions on how to put it in, how to, flatten it out, how to make it look like it was just the whole process. I gave it to her step-by-step. And I never had any issues. It's not like they were listening, they pulled the phone calls. It was nothing like that. They just didn't care as much as these guys. These guys would literally, later on, I would find this out, but literally every week they would burn a disc and the agency would come pick it up. The cops that arrested me, SEC, SET, would come pick it up and they would listen to all our calls. And these guys would even flag the calls for them. Hey, you might want to listen to this call, this individual talking to such and such. I'm telling you, it was crazy. So anyways, like I said, I'm just calling to just see how my mom's doing. She's getting old. I know that I'm probably not going to see them again because, I'm looking at life. My mom's getting old. She lives an alternative type of lifestyle. She's always, used drugs, taking pills. She's always been on methadone. So, I know that this is my opportunity to talk to him as much as I can while I'm here. And that's what I was doing. And that's what I would continue to do through the whole time I was there in the jail. But every time I would call, she would start in on, you need to think about yourself. For once, think about your family. We've been the ones that have always sent you money. We're the ones that always sent you food packages when you needed them. We're the ones that used to come visit you. We used to write you. We used to accept your phone calls. So, I knew that a lot of the things that she was telling me were spot on. She's telling me the type of things that any mother would tell their son that knows he's in a bad situation, that she's about to lose him. So I didn't falter for that. But, the cooperating was just, she was relentless with it. And again, Vicky would never talk about that stuff. She respected that side of me and she knew how I felt about it. But, my mom, she started getting in her head. And I knew they were having conversations, amongst each other. I knew they were talking about it. So Vicky started to talk about it. She started to open up. So what are you going to do? Let's talk about it. What are you going to do? You're a three striker. You're looking at life. They're not going to give you no breaks, boxer. What are you going to do? She's like, I'm not stupid. So I knew my mom was getting in her head, and eventually, this isn't a cop-out. This is straight up. This is as real as I can be. Eventually, I started to pacify her because I knew that stress was a killer in her situation. It didn't matter what I said to her. I could tell her whatever I needed to tell her for her to maintain her health and not to be stressed. It didn't matter because these phone calls, as far as I was concerned, they were never going to come out. They were never going to go anywhere. They were never going to mean nothing. They were just conversations that I had to have with her to keep her alive. But they wouldn't be looked at like that. And one of you asked in the comments, you asked this question, and I'm going to tell you. I know that, I'm stopping and I'm breaking in the story, but you asked, how do your co-defendants get copies of the phone calls, and how do the homies find out about the stuff that you're talking about on the phone? Well, you're going to hear in detail how it all happened, but since you asked the question, let me just tell you like this. So in a county jail like this, where they're involved as much as they were involved, obviously they're monitoring the phone, they're listening, the cops, gang intel officers, they're all listening to the phone calls, they're burning them. And this is all discovery. This is all stuff that they're going to use against you in trial. So when you get indicted, or when they charge you with a criminal complaint or whatever, that's all evidence that the DA is going to use against you. So what happened in my situation is, once I got indicted, that's when the district attorney released all the phone calls. So when you get indicted with 10, 15, 20 other people, you guys are all on one case now. So it's like everything you get, your co-defendants get. If there's 20 of you, the prosecutor has to give 20 packets of discovery to all you guys, the same stuff. If there's 30 of you, he's got to give 30 packets to everybody. So if they're using phone calls like they did in this case, they burn them and everybody gets copies of them. If you haven't been to jail, you wouldn't know this, but when there's phone calls that are involved like this, what they do now is they give you a court order for an iPod, to keep an iPod in your cell. And if there's phone calls or there's video that are part of your case, the district attorney will give those to your attorney, and it's on your attorney, to download all that stuff on an iPod and get it up to you. So that's how the district attorney got all these phone calls from these cops that were recording them. This was a way for them to put me in a bad position with the fellas. And they knew that, once this happened, that eventually I was either going to be on bad standings, or it was just going to cause a lot of chaos. But whatever the case was, it was a move that they played for a specific purpose. Their thing was, let's go ahead and release these calls so that, the fellas can see how Boxer's been talking on the phone. And then maybe, we can get him to come crawling back, and, we'll have him eating out the palm of our hand. We'll have him. We got him by the nuts. He's looking at 185 life. So that's how they do it, bro. And that's how they did it. So anyways, just a little bit more on the phone calls before I wrap up this episode. Again, I would call my mom probably once every day, maybe a couple times every other day. Those phone calls back then were expensive. They're probably like $7 a phone call. They were killing them back then before they changed all that. But, she couldn't pay her phone bill. So I would call her maybe every 2 days. I hit her like 2 or 3 times. And then I wait a couple of days and call her 2 or 3 times. So, every one of those phone calls, though, that's all she talked about. And anybody that listened to those calls, they would have been able to see that, or listen and hear that it was her pushing. It was her initiating that conversation. I was responding to it. I know it doesn't matter. Me being who I was, and me knowing better, and me being held to higher standards, I was expected to shut it down, to just tell her, stop talking like that. Stop talking like that. Stop disrespecting me. Otherwise, I'm not gonna call you no more. That's how I was expected to handle something like that. But I didn't. This was my mom, and my girl was dying. So that was my whole objective, was to just keep her alive. I knew that, eventually she would come to terms with. I knew that eventually time would make it easier on her, that she would come to terms with the fact that I'm not coming back. But, I had to drag her along for as long as I could. And I'm not, I wasn't being a dirtbag. Because later on, people would say, and bro, why'd you lie to her? And why did you keep her believing that you were coming back if you weren't really? Well, I was trying to keep her alive. People don't seem to understand that. So, besides the conversations I was having with my mom, again, Vicky would start to talk about it. She'd start to question me about it. She wanted clarification on what I was going to do. Are you going to go to trial? What if things get bad? What if it gets worse? Because she told me herself, look, I've been hearing things about the case. And as far as the things that I've been hearing, it's getting worse. They're really going after you. And she had to call these guys to ask her to release her wallet or something, her bank card. They had it in discovery and she couldn't even get into her bank. So she had to call them and ask them if they could just release her wallet with her bank card and all that stuff. So, when she did, that's when they took an opportunity to fill her head with just more shit. Hey, we got him. He's dead bang. He's looking at 185 to life. They just charged him. All the charges came out. He's looking at so many felonies with so many gang enhancements, and he's not coming back, and that's where he belongs, and he's a piece of shit. And so, all the building up I was trying to do, to keep her spirits up, they broke her right back down. I had to tell her, that's just what they're saying. They're just telling you that because they want to keep you believing that I'm not coming back, and that, that's just, it's not up to them. It's not going to be up to them. They're the ones that charge me. This has got to go through a trial. If it even goes to trial, this is just a dope case. That's all it is. A trumped up dope case is what I kept telling her. So anyways, I want to say altogether, there was probably 10 phone calls, 10 of them, where eventually I started to tell her, when she would ask me, are you going to cooperate? Sweetheart, if that's what I got to do, if I got to go that far and cooperate to get back home to you, then that's what I'm going to do. That's what I have to do, then that's what I'll do. But, we're putting the cart before the horses. You know what I mean? This hasn't even went anywhere yet. I'm barely even going to arraignment, and you guys are already jumping the gun. I'm going to be here for a minute, obviously fighting this case. I didn't know that I was going to be there nowhere near 10 years. But, I told her I'm going to be here for a while fighting this case, but, it's going to be all right. It'll be okay. In retrospect, when I think back on it, I want to say that I believe that Vicky, she wasn't stupid. I think there was a part of her that knew that I was just trying to keep her pacified, that I wasn't going to come back, that I was in a lot of trouble. But she knew how much I cared about her. She knew how much I was trying to protect her because, I'm the one that basically got our lives, upended. It affected her. She went from having a house with a dog, with me, all her nice, things, her own car, to now sleeping on her mom's couch with all her stuff in the storage. And then, of course, there was, my dilemma, everything that was going on with me. So she had a lot of things on her plate at that time. Anyways, after I want to say about a good 3 weeks of just feeling the intense withdrawals, feeling them, hot, cold flashes, not being able to eat, not sleeping. I want to say I stood up for 30 days straight. I didn't sleep at all. Maybe I might have slept like an hour during the day, but at nighttime, those were the worst times. I don't know why, but it just came on thick at nighttime. So I want to say after like 3 weeks, I started to feel like I was getting my health back. I started to feel like I was getting my strength back. I actually started doing back arms off the sink right before shower time. When, my neighbor went in the shower and I knew I was next, I actually started doing some push-ups and back arms. I was feeling a little bit better. What really made me feel good is every time I went out there and took a hot ass shower, I come back and it would make me just feel like all that shit was just coming out of my pores. That was the best time, was right after a hot ass shower. Anyways, after 3 weeks, eventually I would end up I went to court on my first arraignment, probably like 3 days after I got there, but they kept amending charges. I told you guys I was trying to take the cases off of Roger Carranza and John Santa Ana. I took the money. I told them that the money that they found in Roger's garage was mine. I even signed for it. And because I did that, they ended up hitting me with another 25 to life, another strike for having over $25,000 that derived from criminal activity. I wasn't able to cop to the ounce of dope that they found in his trunk because they wouldn't let me. They heard the phone calls. So that was out. Also, the weapons that they found at John Santa Ana's. I had good intentions, and my intentions were to take the case off that old man. That was a cool old man. And I felt like these guys had got caught up because they were helping us, or they were helping me and my regiment. And I just didn't see any sense in, if I was going to catch a life case behind this, why not try to cut a couple of these other dudes loose? And that's what I tried to do. But again, these cops were on all our phone calls, so that didn't happen. So anyways, after about 3 weeks, they unexpectedly brought me to court again for another arraignment. This was to give me a new criminal complaint. They amended some more charges. They hit me with the money, $25,000. They also hit me with the conspiracy and participating in a criminal street gang, which is a separate felony in itself. And they hit me with 3 enhancements. So not only did they do that, but at that point, they consolidated my case with John Santa Ana, Roger Carranza, and also Jose Perez, Bling Bling, the little baller that introduced me to Julio. So I got some co-defendants now. I got a couple more charges. Really, it didn't matter in the big scheme of things because of how much time I was looking at. I was already looking at life. It didn't matter if they gave me 20 more felonies and 10 more gang enhancements. It really didn't matter. It was overkill already. But anyways, this is probably a good spot to go ahead and cut this, because from there, other things are going to start to happen on my way back from court. That's when they're about to make a move, a major move that I didn't expect. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. This episode 64 of Inner Demons. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know I was all over the place, but I'm trying to give you guys as much of this as I can. If there's other things that I think about that I'm not covering, I'm going to probably follow up on all this stuff in the next episode. Anyways, keep the comments coming. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the positive support, all the comments, and all that good stuff. Anyways, this is your boy B, and I'm out.